This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Hi there and welcome to the Wednesday week, and this is my Wednesday, our offshoot podcast, where we sit down and have a chat with a Wednesday fan. Now, this gentleman here, John Duncan, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm great, mate. Good to see you too.
Yeah, good to see you. The first time we met was on a train coming home from Burton Albion a couple of years ago when we won down at Burton. I was very worse for wear and being looked after by my 14-year-old son. And you were looking really, really dapper. Had you been to hospitality?
I blagged some corporate, mate. So I was in with the Burton lot, and a mate of mine had sorted out some tickets with those guys. So yes, I was being very well dressed.
and I seem to remember that there was about half a dozen people on this carriage heading back up to Sheffield who were Wednesday, and the rest had no idea who we were.
Yeah,
and there was stuff being thrown. Wasn't there like a stuffed owl or something being thrown?
Stuffed owl, yeah. And then all of a sudden, this guy who was quite suited and booted started singing, Wednesday songs, and they were all, "Oh, Jesus, we've got another nutter here," and that were me. Yeah.
Yes, I seem to remember that. And I remember Ash falling asleep, or Ash of the podcast falling asleep, and the rest is history. Let's say.
Yes.
So, believe it or not, this is our second attempt at this podcast tonight because the first one locked up. And again, it's still immense. It's still awesome. It goes down the annals of history. Is your Wednesday wall. That is fantastic, mate.
Cheers, Simon. Yeah, like I say, it's taken 40-odd years of creating, but some happy memories. And just when I come to before a match, say a few words to the gods of S6 and say, "Come on, let's have a win today, lads," then head off. And
yeah, all right. Well, that's done you well over the last few months.
Indeed.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm John, and I've been a Wednesday fan for such a long time. I live in a little place called Ackworth near Pontefract, so I'm not a Sheffield lad, but I've just really, really strong connection to the club and the city now. I work for Virgin Media O2, and so I'm doing sort of the IT stuff, mate. So that's
that's gone really well tonight,
and that's going so well. You need to change
You
need to change, mate. So
yeah, okay, yeah, blame me. Right, okay. So I'm going to pull at a thread here. You live in Ackworth near Pontefract.
Yeah.
Where does the Wednesday connection come in, and how did you become a Wednesday fan?
Yeah, sure. So top of it is I was actually born in Leeds, and in a place called Beeston. So from where I was born, you could see Ellen Road. Now, fortunately for me, my mum and dad moved when I was only 6 months old to Wakefield, and I grew up in Wakefield. And I was obviously there's no club in Wakefield, so there's a bit of a divide. Now, my dad's a Middlesbrough supporter, so going up to watch Middlesbrough was never really going to happen. And then, and as I got older, and I was like, "Dad, I'd really like to go and watch the football." He took me to Barnsley, and I thought, "Oh God, that was awful." They were in League 4 or Division 4 as they were. It was horrible. I went once, didn't ever want to go again. He took me to Leeds. In about, I think it was about 82, and they were terrible. And it wasn't a really nice place to go, as you can imagine, early 80s in Leeds. And he says, "Right, you're not going there again." And then his best mate, lived in the same village as me, was a Wednesday fan, and from Attercliffe. And he just sort of said, "Well, why don't you come together?" And he had a son same age as me, and we went to Hillsborough the first time in 1984, which was their promotion season under Howard Wilkinson, and that was it. I fell in love. I went to first game was against Oldham, 2nd of January. We beat them 3-0, and it is the players who scored, mate. Bannister, Tony Cunningham, and Imre Varadi.
Oh, my life!
Which was just the best. Oh. Just great. So it was a real great welcome into Wednesday, and that was it. And from then on, I just started going with like the sort of the four of us. It was my dad and his mate and his son, going on the north, and yeah, been going ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. So growing up at school, where did you go to school then? In
In
Wakefield?
Wakefield, in
Yeah,
Wakey. So most people were Leeds fans.
yeah, yeah. Well, there'd be either rugby league or football
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Wakefield. Yeah. So how did that go down with the Leeds fans? I mean, I can understand why you didn't want to go to Leeds again. I mean, if I took my son to Leeds now, if he didn't like football, he'd never want to go again. So how did that? How did that sort of go down with your mates? I mean, your busy mate at school. Who did you obviously, we
Yeah.
grew up. You know, you had a busy mate that went through all the way through school. Who did he support?
Yeah, they were all like Leeds fans until when I got to 16. I went to college and in Wakefield, and then my best mate there, he was sort of off, wasn't really bothered, and I sort of said, "Come to Hillsborough with me," and I addicted him, and and now he's a Wednesday fan, even though he lived in Birmingham. My mate Adam, who I often go to games with, so yeah, but I used to get a lot of stick. But to be fair, in those days, I mean, when I was that sort of age, we were, League One, or Division One or Premier League as it became. So, and we were beating Leeds. We were beating Man United.
I'm going to say we're a similar. I'm a little bit older than you, but we're from the similar generation. So we sort of grew up with the same players, so to speak. And I know when obviously this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there for podcasts, etc. And we've been criticised in the past for, oh God, here we go again. They're wheeling the old blokes out and stuff. But I think that might be some amount of jealousy because we grew up in a golden time to be a Wednesday fan, didn't we?
We did.
Was just a golden time.
We were winning, and like I say, I mean, I've seen us beating Man United, so many times, and Liverpool and Arsenal and Spurs. We were competing and doing really, really well. The Wilkinson years, and then obviously into Ron and Trevor. We were just, a top team. So people weren't taking the mick as much. But I've been suffering ever since the turn of this century. But
we were one of the probably top 5 teams. Certainly going into the 90s.
Yeah,
we were definitely we must have been one of the top 5 because we finished third. In the old first division, we always finished top 10 in the Premiership until mid 90s. So it was a good time to be a Wednesday fan, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I say I've got those were the glory days, and obviously brilliant fond memories of those times, and my favourite players, and from those periods and everything. It was just a great time to be a Wednesday fan.
So at that time, obviously, from your first game playing Oldham, and I've had many a good time up in Oldham. Obviously, when you dropped into us, we're starting to come into ourselves. We're starting to be that formidable team, first division. Yep. Big Ron came in. You're still a young kid, so what you would have been when Ron was in, 16, 17?
17, 18 years old, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. 1990, because my son, I'm only saying this because I had to witness it with my son a couple of years ago, but 1990, we got relegated.
Yep.
How, as a impressionable teenager, did that feel? Your very first relegation?
Yeah, I was there. I was there that day. I wasn't one of the people on the telly with the tears, but I was heartbroken, and I'd started watching Wednesday when we were in the old Division 2, so I had experience. But the rest of the time, it'd been Division 1 Premier League, as it was coming up. So it was heartbreaking. But I knew at that time then we had a fantastic team, and it wasn't a great surprise to us that we're going to come back, and of course we did.
Yeah, we did. I remember my son's first relegation was against Derby, and it didn't dawn on him until probably an hour later. We didn't go. We watched it on. Well, nobody went because it was lockdown. Nobody could go, could they?
Yeah.
And we watched it on Sky, and we went home because we watched it at friends. And then he just broke down and just started crying. And I was counting up on my hand how many relegations I'd witnessed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a great deal of consolation. So I seem to remember that first one was my first relegation as well.
Yep.
was just that thought of having to go and see my friends who probably like same as your friends. I was brought up in Derbyshire, were Derby and Tottenham fans.
Oh yeah.
And it was just not the best place to go to afterwards.
It was merciless. But again, the one good thing about all this was because where I live, I don't know any Blades, so I was.
That was a bit like me as well. There weren't many Blades out in Derbyshire. It seemed to be a few Wednesday, and then mainly sort of Derby, and then you had your Liverpool, your Tottenham, because Tottenham were a decent side in those days.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, they are now. But so, can I ask you a question? Did you go to Wembley?
Just now? Yeah.
No, Wembley in '91.
No, I didn't.
First trip, you didn't.
No, so 91. So when I was 18, I went to university and I went to Belfast of all places. So I was over there. So I watched the game in a pub in Belfast. And if you've ever been to Belfast, there's obviously they love the football. And when it's English football, they either support Man United or anybody but Man United.
Yeah.
So I was in this pub with like Liverpool and Arsenal and Leeds fans who were all from Northern Ireland, but they were all supporting Sheffield Wednesday. And I was the only person in the bar with a Wednesday shirt on watching the game, which was obviously a terrible game. So I couldn't get over to the game. But obviously we won it, and free Guinness for me all night. So it was
fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. That dink, yeah, it's yeah.
I mean, and we had obviously Worthington was in the side then, so Northern Ireland player, Sheridan, Republic of Ireland. So obviously, that the Irish would have liked to have supported us in that game, although they would have had Dennis Irwin and a few others from Ireland.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So we'll talk a little bit about the glory years because they're the ones that we dine out on, and then tell our kids. Kids, we had a fantastic time, didn't we, in the early 90s into the Premiership?
Yeah.
I always ask people who their favourite player was in that sort of era. You've got a great shirt on there. Absolutely love that shirt. It's awesome. Is it the original? Is that
it
one?
Is.
It is.
This is an original. Yeah. It was the first away shirt I ever bought, and I absolutely loved it. So, it's 93, 94 sort of season, wasn't it, this one? And absolutely loved it. I think, at that time, favourite players, it's Hurst, it's Sheridan, it's Waddle, it's Nilsson, it's those fantastic players. I think if you said my all-time Sheffield Wednesday player would be Mel Sterland, because that's the guy I sort of grew up with as being a legend. But in this period, I'd probably say Nilsson. I just love Roland Nilsson. Just class.
I think Roland Nilsson was that consummate professional, wasn't he? We had him in the podcast in lockdown, and he just the stories he told, and I met him at the 91 dinner, and he was just so approachable and no pretenses. I don't think he actually ever really realised how good he was.
Yeah. He seemed a very modest man. Very,
And in this day and age, what would he be worth if he was playing now? So just incredible, wouldn't it?
He was just pure class on the ball. Never had a bad game, and just made that team tick. And again, perhaps I've got a thing for right backs, because I love Sterling and I love Nilsson, but these guys were just really, really great players, and sort of nowadays you'd call them wing backs. Certainly Sterling would, So
absolutely. Well, Mel was the consummate wing back, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he bleeds blue and white. I've been to a few dinners with him, had a few pints with him. Christ, he can drink. And he is consummate Wednesday, blue and white. He bleeds it. And I agree. From the era before the sort of Atkinson / Francis era, he was the first name on the team sheet, I would have said.
Yeah, 100%. And they just you know, I just looked at it now. He scored 48 goals for Wednesday as a right back, you know, which is a fantastic return. And the amount of goals that he created, you know, for like Lee Chapman, who was one of my, again, you know, someone from the early days. I just like these tall lads because, and I'm 6'6" as well, you see. So I like these tall lads, and Sterling was just a great provider. So
yes, there were great times, really good times. Let down then, obviously. I was thinking about this earlier on, about what we were going to talk about and stuff, and it was that we started off so well, didn't we? And obviously Francis came in and built upon it by bringing people like Chris Waddle in and Des Walker and Chris Woods, and then there was a line, wasn't there? I was going to ask you, when did you think it started to go wrong? You know, was it higher up? I mean, we have issues with boards now. What was your opinion of where things started to go tail off?
There's a lot on Dave Richards' door, in my opinion. I think it started to tail off in the Pleat era. I was at the game when Di Canio pushed over Alcock, and that was like, what the hell's going on? I think from that moment onwards, I think it just seemed to be beginning of the decline, and then obviously the Danny Wilson years and the eventual relegation. It was because, again, I used to go and watch the guys, and they were still beating Man United. And you know, in the late 90s, my sister and I used to go and have a season ticket together and sit on the north, and it was just fantastic to see those. And I had some, you know, some really good players in that team as well, but they were starting to buy a few, you know, not so good players, and it was like, they're not replacing. When Di Canio went, for example, no, he was never really replaced. You know, so
he was Dan's just on a podcast, and they were talking about Di Canio and Carbone. And we had Di Canio and Carbone in the side, and then we had Peter Atherton in the side, and it was just like chalk and cheese, wasn't it? And you know, we talk at work about Di Canio, and I think, like you say, a lot of it lies at Dave Richards' door. Was the fact that we fell, and maybe this was Dave Richards opening the door for his entrance into the Premier League to become Premier League chairman. But it was you look at how players are treated now by doing far, far worse to what he did. I know pushing a referee over it isn't something they should do, but we effectively ostracized him from the club. And a player who really, Di Canio, needed his ego massaging, and then we sold him for, was it 1.5 million or something to West Ham? And
he did great things there, you know.
And then he won was it Fair Play Award, Player Fair Play Award, and you just think to yourself, if we'd handled that a little bit, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if we'd handled that better, maybe we could have staved off relegation, maybe for a few more years. I don't know.
I think the probably writing was on the wall eventually. And you know, in those times there was a lot of investment coming into other clubs which we didn't keep up with. And I totally agree. I think Richard had that Premier League ambition, didn't he? And oh God, whenever I saw him going onto the pitch, you know, handing out medals and stuff, I was like, God, you didn't have to screw our team over, didn't you? You know, so not bitter at all.
Not bitter. So obviously we get to 2000, we get relegated. The inevitable happens. What were your feelings when we were relegated about what would happen to Wednesday? Would we come back up? Would we stay down? What was your thoughts to that?
I thought initially, I thought the team was poor. You know, I mean, if you look at some of the, I mean, we did like Gilles de Builder, and you know, these were our strike force. And thinking, gosh, where's the goals going to come from? So I knew we'd have to do some building. I didn't think we would sink as badly and be gone for so long. Maybe 1 or 2 seasons in the Championship, and then we would build, and then we'd come back up to the Premier League. But then it just started that sort of merry-go-round of managers failing and the club getting into more trouble, and the players' standard was getting to the ones where like, who the hell are they? When you'd been used to, you know, names that you'd heard of, internationals, and it's like, who? John Beswetherick, it was, it was getting to that sort of stage, But I mean, until obviously we went down all the way to League One, and
John Beswetherick always seems to be the one that's quoted. I think
he haunts
we were at Mansfield, and he was brought on and then substituted. He was a sub, and he came on as a sub and then was substituted. I'm sure it was Mansfield away.
Yeah.
And not Mansfield, Macclesfield away. And
yeah.
It was just like and I don't think he ever played for Wednesday again after that. So it was just, was the only football player I ever knew that wore eyeliner, because I think he was a goth, I seem to remember. It was just the most bizarrest signing. And you just knew how low we had dropped. So we were putting up with a consummate amount of dross on the pitch.
We were.
And we had a lot of, obviously, it's still fresh in our mind of where we were 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
But then we had a little bit of a, hang on a second, my dog's barking. We had a bit of a consummate golden era under Paul Sturrock.
Oh, the Sturrock era.
Yeah. I mean, what was your thoughts during that period?
I loved that, I say, because then we started to get some players who really sort of bought into the club. I mean, we had players like, Whelan and and Peacock and Lee Bullen. I've got a lot of time for Lee Bullen, and we started building to some momentum, and then some character flair players like JP McGovern and I loved and McLean. A really good quality striker. So I think one of my favourite ever games was Cardiff. That was just one of my best days out. Absolute. I thought my heart was going to stop when when we had the penalty to make it 2-2, and I thought if he misses this, but obviously then we went on. So then that was the start, because we'd had some wasn't it like Brunty was in the team soon around that time as well. I was thinking these guys went on to fantastic careers. So there was some building blocks there for the future. But I say Cardiff was one of my best ever memories. And just very quick story on that. I went with my mate Adam, who lives in Birmingham. And I say we went down, got to Bristol, got into Newport, I think it was. Had a couple of jars in Newport, got into Cardiff, which was just obviously blue and white. Never mind Hartlepool with blue and white. We had the whole city to ourselves. And go into the pub, and we went into a pub called the Prince of Wales. And then just in this atmosphere started bubbling up, and people started chanting. And there was like, hang on a minute, there was like Chris Waddle. The rumour went round that Chris Waddle was in there. He never was, but people started going into that. Got into the game, and I kid you not, I was probably in the very back row of the stadium. And right next to me and my mate was this young couple with a baby. And I mean a baby, like 3 to 4 months, something old. And they were changing its nappy literally just before I think it was Glenn Whelan scored the third, and I was like, oh my god, there's a world of shit hitting this way, and it was going to go up in front of us. So incredible memories of the smell.
You can just imagine this nappy going up in the air. They haven't folded up. Yay! And then anyway.
I think that child now, what's that? Would be 18? No, how old was it?
Absolutely.
2005. What was that? Yeah. 18 years ago.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I know my dad had been quite poorly, and we took him and we parked in Newport and got the train.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out, and like you say, it was just a sea of blue and white, and that's I think Wembley has changed from the original days, and certainly since 91 and 20. It's changed a hell of a lot. Because of it's been built up now, but because Cardiff's so in the centre, and you've got these narrow streets. We were outside a pub, and the actual bus came in front of us. And I remember Paul Sturrock. I was with my dad and my ex-wife, and Paul Sturrock was sort of, this coach was having to slowly move down because it was all Wednesday, and he looked petrified. Paul Sturrock. He looked absolutely. He was like, "Oh, what the flipping heck have I just got myself into?" Because obviously they saw the expectations.
Yeah.
It was that in my mind up until recently really sticks in my mind as a really good final, a really good final. Yeah.
Classic game. Yeah.
And we had some great players, like you say. We had, Glenn Whelan, Bully, who probably we tend to view a lot more as a better player than he actually was. But he
Yeah.
was a consummate captain, wasn't he? He
Yeah.
was.
He was a rocket, and he was a leader, and that's what we
Yes,
needed.
absolutely right. He was a leader, and players, Craig Rocastle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, back to chairman, etc. The sad thing that made me sad was because I always liked Paul Sturrock. I thought he was a great manager. I
Yeah.
always felt he wasn't backed up the following season
Yeah.
by our chairman at the time, Dave Richards. Maybe he didn't have the finances that we needed to stay in the Championship at that time.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have seen an injection of amount of money and seen how Luggy could have moved the team further instead of having to sell our assets like Brunty and Whelan, who, like you say, went on to fantastic careers. So fast forward again, some dark times again. Jesus Christ. No wonder we're both so grey.
I say I used to have a full head of hair, mate, and not a grey hair on me, but this is what Wednesday does to you.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Just so fast forward, and we head into nearly getting wound up by HMRC.
Yep.
Being bought out by Milan Mandaric, and then a steadying of the ship, I suppose, but nothing really stands out in that time, maybe.
No.
Brian Laws gets plaudits, obviously, for beating United twice in a season.
Yeah.
And we had, Tudgay and a few other players who were better than what we'd seen. But then a certain chairman comes in, and then a certain Portuguese manager appears on the scene, and we end up spaffing a load of money on players.
Absolutely. And you start to believe again, don't you? You just start to believe, to think this is gonna be our time, and we were that close.
What's your that first season? I mean, that first season came from nowhere, didn't it?
Yeah.
Carlos came in. We'd already got players in who, Bannon was already with us. Westwood was already with us, and then we brought in a few additional players. What was your thoughts that first season when that happened?
Total shock. I was, expecting, bottom end, just to sort of scrape by and just play ordinary football. But like you say, the Carlos comes in, and it's like, hang on a minute, we're going for it. We're absolutely from the kitchen sink. It doesn't matter if we, concede, but we're going to go and we're going to outscore whoever puts in front of us. And there was just that belief and that swagger about the team, and the confidence that sort of was building. And Kieran Lee, the people like that, just pure quality when they joined the team. And Wallace and the guys are coming through. I mean, I'm a massive Ati Newhugh fan, and I just again these guys it just started to come together. And I'm thinking, we're going to do stuff here, and it's and Forestieri, and it's like, this is us. We're going to get there. And one of the best games, most memorable games of my life was the Brighton game, at home, when that was just, I'd never seen Hillsborough like it, and the atmosphere that day, and we were great. Wallace, that goal, and Kieran Lee, just that still goosebumps now. It's just a fantastic day, but obviously let down at Wembley, but not to be.
Yeah,
that's we'll forget about that one.
yeah. It was. So then, obviously, the following season, what could we do next? And we obviously, the chairman decided wasn't afraid of spending money in those days. We know where we ended up. We ended up losing to Huddersfield in the playoffs. We signed a number of players. I might know the answer to this, but I'll ask you the question anyway. We signed quite a few players there that on paper looked amazing. Do you mean like Almin Abdi? Right. So I was about to say, what was the biggest letdown that season in regards to where do you think it went wrong from, like you say, the surprise to being one of the favourites to get promoted the next season? Right?
Yeah.
Where did it all go wrong?
Great question, Si. Oh my goodness. I I don't know. I just think, the probably just the team didn't gel as well. They hadn't all bought into it. There may have been some disruptive players in the dressing room. I don't know. I mean, but we had people like who were really solid Wednesday players like Bannon and Hutchinson at this time. Now I think these are great players, and we still had Kieran Westwood, and we had the fundamentals and the backbone of a great team. So I can't answer that question, mate. I don't know. But yeah, what you doing with Alman Abdi, and who was that other one? Herbie. What's he came?
Emmanuelson.
Emmanuelson.
And did he play in like one game or something like that towards the end?
Who are these guys?
And his claim to fame, I think.
I was at that game.
Yeah, same. Wasn't it his claim to fame that there was a photograph of him, I think, in the changing rooms with just a pair of boxer shorts on? And I think every single female Wednesday fan suddenly fell in love with him, despite him never kicking a ball for Wednesday. I have no idea why.
No.
And obviously, I think same season we signed Jordan Rhodes as well. And who refused to take a penalty. And
that was a pull. I mean, that's because we'd all been calling for him. Wednesday fans have been calling for Jordan Rhodes for years, and then by the time we get him, he's just. He's shy. He was just awful. A hat trick against Forest. I think that was the only thing.
He had the perfect hat trick, didn't he?
One game,
Forest. Yeah,
and that's just typical Wednesday.
Yes, it's the Pete McKee T-shirt. Typical Wednesday.
A typical Wednesday. But I've got a picture of myself with myself and Jordan Rhodes. I got a little story because this was around that time as well. I was in Portugal on holiday when Wednesday were out there training in Albufeira. And I went out there, and it was Bruce was the manager, and we were playing Shrewsbury Town in a friendly, and I was like, my wife would have said, she didn't know that Wednesday were training, so I said, right, do you mind if we just go into this little thing? And then I sort of sneaked us in, and then we went in and watched the game, and I got to meet Jordan Rhodes, Adam Reach, Hutchinson. Bannon was there, and Lucas Jow was there, and it was just brilliant to meet all the players. And then I met Brucey, and I had a bit of a chat with Brucey, and it was literally 2 days. I said, "There's rumours about him going, weren't there?" And I was like, "You're not going, are you, Steve?" And he says, "Oh, don't be daft. Don't believe all you think." And the snake, he went 2 days later, didn't he? So
at least said about that the better.
Yeah. But
So we had that again. We were in these slots, aren't we, of our lifetime?
Yeah.
Of up, down, and then we obviously Carlos left, and we appointed Joss.
Yeah, God.
And then he went. And
Gary Monk next.
Gary Monk came in, who I'll put my hands up, thought was a half decent appointment. I thought he's a youngish guy. He seemed to have had a marginal amount of success at Leeds. He'd managed to avoid, I think it was at Birmingham, wasn't it? And they'd had a point deduction. But then obviously, and we were third at Christmas.
Yeah.
Third at Christmas. And then I went upstairs on Boxing Day to the toilet and came back down. And I went upstairs at 0-0 and came back downstairs, and we were 3-0 down at Stoke or wherever it was. And then we had COVID.
Yeah.
And then Darren Moore came in, which we're fast forwarding into where we are over the last couple of years.
Sure.
So the first season, hit and miss. The season we've just done, and we'll culminate in where we were in May.
Yeah.
What? I mean, obviously we bumped into each other Darren Moore's first season, and we made the playoffs, and unfortunately it just sort of weren't stood up to the mantle, I don't think, on those two playoff games. No. So last season, what's your thoughts? Record-breaking season and still finished third.
Yeah. Well, just a quick one on Darren Moore. That day, I met him at Burton Albion. Okay. So after the game, and that was one of his first games back, if not his first game back after he'd had COVID and he was in a really bad way. And me and my mate Adam was chatting to him, and just the nicest bloke. I mean, I'm a massive Darren Moore fan. Just thought he brought a real unity back amongst the fans, and that sense of this is our Wednesday again, and it's not chance series, it's ours, and we felt connected again. But I mean, the record breaking season was just amazing. I mean, just an absolute wonderful season to be there. I loved it. It was we obviously had a bit of a blip round about the February-March time, and there was a few questions about how if we're gonna make it, and how on earth do you get 96 points and not get there. And there's obvious ones like Forest Green. You think we've blown it a little bit here, guys, but I was always a believer. A believer. I've been accused of being a happy clapper before, and I probably was, but I believed.
Did you go to the Peterborough home game, the crazy game?
So this is one of the regrets of my life, Simon.
Oh, no.
I didn't go, and I'll tell you for why. Other than Sheffield Wednesday and my family being the big loves in my life, I'm a massive Depeche Mode fan, and May the 18th is my birthday.
Right.
Right. So that day, Peterborough at home, obviously, playoffs, I was fully expecting us to finish first or second. I was like, please, God, let's just get promoted and I can go and celebrate. And I was in Amsterdam because Depeche Mode were playing in Amsterdam on my birthday. Amazing, fantastic sort of concert. I loved them. And I was with my wife and my cousin, and they were just giving me score flashes. And I was like, no, please don't, because I was going into that. We're not going to make it. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And anyhow, the concert had finished, and I was on the tram getting back when the penalty shootout was happening. And my mate Adam was just messaging me. We score. And I that's the time I cried. I cried, and then I've watched that game now to make up for it about 1,000 times, and. Yeah,
I was lucky enough to be there. I think my son went with Ash to the away game, because we did virtually every away game last season.
Yeah,
and my son, we tracked him all the way up the A1. I couldn't go because I'd been working in London and didn't get back till late. So, I think they left on the third goal or just as the fourth went in, and. He got out of Ash's car, slammed the door. So I'm apologising to Ash. Sorry about that. He's stomping off. We're not going next week, Dad. So I'd watched it on Sky, and I was like, don't fancy going to that. My mate had stood up, walked out of the house. We watched it in my bar, and he went, I'm not going next week.
Yeah.
And in the end, the next day he walked in, because it was a Friday night, wasn't it? And he walked in and he said, Dad, yeah, I might have been a bit hasty yesterday. Can we still go next week? And I'd already made the decision we were going.
Nice.
But my friend, Adi, he didn't go. So Joanne, my partner, she went with us, and she's done a handful of games. She's not really into football.
Yeah.
And she said that's one of the most amazing nights she's ever experienced. Yeah. Amazing nights.
Yeah, and absolutely. I could feel it and I could sense it, but I wasn't there. And and I was at Wembley.
Well, I was going to move on to that Wembley. I mean, we'll touch on Wembley and then we'll go into where we are now. And
yeah,
it what a day. I mean, the game was dreadful. The game was dreadful, but the support was amazing.
Yeah. It was class.
I had a quick look on your Instagram, saw your photographs of you there. Is that your mate from?
Yeah, that's Adam.
Adam.
Yeah.
Great day, wasn't it?
Just the best day. Yeah. I've got family who live down in Stevenage, so I'd gone down and stayed with them the night before, so it was really easy for me to get in and get the train in. So I wasn't getting in with everybody else, but as you're getting closer and closer, there was getting more and more Wednesday fans getting on. Didn't see many Barnsley fans. More, and then the apps and just. I came in on my own and met Adam at the game, but I was just got chatting to all sorts of people, and the atmosphere was brilliant, and getting on a few beers, and just fantastic. Loved it, and yeah, again, it was one of those games where it was a terrible game, and I was like, we're going to blow this, aren't we? We're absolutely going to blow this. We're not going to do it. And when obviously Volksy scored, I thought that's we've done it. And I thought my heart was going to stop. And then obviously not to be. But when Windass scored, that was just
it was
electric.
Funny, wasn't it? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And the funny thing was that Volksy's goal deserved to be the winning goal, because it was a superb goal. And like it was like, and then here, up in the air, then here, because it was ruled offside. But then the header in the dying minutes, And of all the players to score, he'd had an awful game. I mean, when they announced he was man of the match, we were like, what?
He'd done nothing.
He'd done nothing.
And it was kind of like Hull City all over again, wasn't it? It was like,
it was.
we really going to, and they had 10 men, and we absolutely should have mullered them. The lad was through on goal, wasn't he? And he spooned it from 6 yards. So
I thought that was it. That was it. That's us done, finished.
Yeah, but what an atmosphere! And then afterwards, a few beers, and then back to my family's in Stevenage and celebrating with them, because that's the one thing is with my family is, like I say, I'm the first Wednesday fan, but I've now got nephews and cousins.
Converted them.
I'm my sister and my daughter and my wife. I'm converting everybody to be a Wednesday fan.
You're like an alternative drug dealer. Just causing.
I will bring you misery.
Causing copious amounts of.
I'm on the downers
across the whole of West Yorkshire and further south. We'll try and avoid the last few months. I just want to have a quick word about our manager, Danny Rule. What's your thoughts on him?
Oh, at first impression, he's just exactly what we need. He's breath of fresh air. He seems to be clicking with the players. The 4 games we've played, even though we've only won one of them, we're playing so much better. There's a cohesion there. There's the attacking spirit. We're not sitting off. We're pressing harder, and we look like we're going to get some more points. So he seems to do well with the press, unlike the last lad, and he's breath of fresh air for me, and right up for the Daddy Cool song. So
I will not talk about that. I'm the only one I'm only the one of the podcasters who I obviously grew up like you would have done with Boney M, and I didn't like them the first time round. So they all take the piss out of me over that. No. So just to sort of finish off, a couple of questions I want to ask you. So I want you to give me if we were having a 5-a-side, so we're going to have a 5-a-side competition, right?
Yep.
So you've got 5 players plus a sub and a manager. So out of all the Wednesday players you've seen since you started following them up today, who would be your 5 choices to play, and who would be your sub? Yeah.
Okay. Well, it won't surprise you. I'm going in that sort of the 90s era as my best. So it has to be Kev in goals, Kevin Pressman. If it goes to penalty shootouts, you know what he's going to do.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think we've had a better defender other than Nilsson as Des Walker. So I'd have Des Walker in my team.
Yeah.
You have to have Sheridan, and you watch these Legends games of the 5-a-side with Waddle, and he would be a great 5-a-side. So it'd be Waddle, Sheridan, Walker, Pressman, and up front I'd have Atty Newhill.
Oh, Big Dave!
I'd have Atty because I love the man.
Prime was it? Which game was it? Was it Preston or Norwich?
It was Preston.
Preston.
Oh well, Preston was the one when he got on. Was it the one from the corner and he brought it in? That was just one of that was
prime Atty, or Atty when we played Leeds and it was snowing.
But another reason why I love him so much is because of. I probably dislike Leeds more than the Blades because of my background and my mates.
Yeah.
So and when we beat them 6-0 and stuff like that, and Atty just had a thing about scoring against Leeds.
He did. So. He always does. Yeah, I love Atty, and I think he commentated, co-commentated on Radio Sheffield the playoffs, and I've listened to some of that, and it is an absolute pleasure. Right, okay, that's an interesting forward. Who would you have on the bench?
Di Canio. I'd have Paolo on the bench because just the probably one of the most, well, other than again Waddle, the most gifted players I've ever seen at Hillsborough. What he could do, him and Carboni. Carboni was, again, I loved Carboni that period of time, and so I'd have him, and manager I'd have Ron. I'd have Big Ron because he did actually manage most of those players. Not all of them, but most of them. So even though he sort of left and. Under a bit of a cloud. He came back, so we forgave him.
Yeah, we came back, and then Dave Richards got his revenge on him, didn't he? So So right, it was one thing I didn't ask you about earlier on in regards to, we messaged about that, was football kit, home football kit. So we're playing in blue and white stripes, obviously.
Yep.
Well, we're playing in blue and white.
Yep.
What kit would they be wearing? So what era kit would they be wearing?
I'd have the go back to the beginnings. 84, 83, 84. Is it the Finlux and the
Finlux and the thin stripes.
No, not the thin stripes.
Oh, the wide stripes.
The wider stripes.
Yeah. I know which one you mean.
Umbro.
Yeah.
And it's one I've looked on these websites to try and find one, and you can't get one for less than £300 or £400, you know. So
not an original one. There's
not an original.
Copies out there.
Yeah. But I love that shit. So I'd have them playing in that.
Yeah.
Probably not the tight blue shorts that they used to wear those days as well, because
they were a bit tight, weren't they? Yeah, they were tight.
Yeah, so I'd have them in that. But the first home shirt I ever bought was the thin blue and white one. Which was 87, so I bought that one.
Fantastic, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. We could have talked forever, but I'm just conscious of the time, mate.
Oh, mate, no worries. Well, love it, and see you soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody who's listening to this, if you like it, please follow us. Please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. We're on X, or as old people still call it, Twitter. We're obviously on all. If you go on to I can't say the word because there's one behind me. They will play the podcast. It's on Apple, and we've also got our own little TikTok because we're down with the kids. We're proper down with the kids, and it's normally Steve who does that, but I did mine at the weekend, and you'll just see if you watch it on TikTok how much alcohol I had at Bristol, because I don't remember a great deal of it, and I've got to stop drinking. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. And, we'll see you really, 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 really soon when I can work out how to stop this recording.
Cheers. Up the owls.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.